Hey y'all, welcome to episode 28 of the Stay at Home Son podcast. And today we have a very special interview. We are going to be reviewing the director and filmmaker behind the amazing indie film Remote. Ben, I want to thank you for coming on the show today. And the first question I have for you is what was the inspiration behind this film? Because it had a lot going on and a lot of cool topics.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Yeah, it does have a lot going on, and sometimes it's hard to kind of nail it down in a couple sentences. But long story short, it's my third feature film that I've gotten to direct, and I've been in the industry for almost 15 years, working not only independent but also have a pretty long career in studio filmmaking as well as production staff. And so, long story short, we all kind of came to this like moment of just kind of stop work in 2020 during the pandemic. And from that moment forward, the world has significantly changed, and I've just been interested in how the world has been changing ever since. And since that time, I've unfortunately had almost at this point now, nearly 15 people that I was close to, some people my age, some people older, family members, close friends, to pass away in the last couple of years, especially around the pandemic time. And I was just dealing with a lot of grief and a lot of unprocessed grief, and I was really interested in talking about that. And so I was just trying to find a story that would work with. And jumping back even further, I've been a sleepwalker all my life. I sleepwalk fairly regularly, especially when I was in college. And I've always wanted to do a movie about that. And although my sleepwalking episodes are pretty comical, I just saw the potential for a psychological thriller. And so that's been in the back of my head for a long time. And so I started pairing that concept with, well, what if, someone's sleepwalking because of grief? And then what if on top of that, they're still in pandemic mode where they're in a remote location, they're working remotely. And so all these elements just started slowly forming this story. And once I had it in my head, I wrote it pretty quickly, actually. And within 9 months after the first draft of writing, we were shooting it. So those are kind of the core elements of how it all just kind of came together over the course of a couple years. And then, of course, there's an element of therapy in here as well that I've become really interested in because, a lot of people get their therapy now online through their computers. They're not in person. And so I just wanted to just dive into all these elements that we're all kind of facing as the world is changing. So that's kind of the best way I can describe it.
Yeah, and this film had a lot going on. I think it was one of those films where I went in and I expected maybe a certain plot line. Maybe she goes to the house and, she's getting stalked. And I think it was kind of crazy how y'all were able to kind of like make that plot line where you kind of thought that was going to happen. And then it just totally takes a turn. So, this movie talked a lot about like AI and had a lot of like how that is interacting with humans and how that's changing our, abilities to do work and just how it's dictating our lives. So would you say that this film was a pro AI film or an anti AI film or just an AI curious film? Like kind of like just showing you like, hey, this could happen. This is something that could be a threat or just something kind of using AI as a way to, rile people up.
I think the audience member needs to make that decision. What I will say is, as a person, as me, Ben Hall, I definitely think that we are going about AI incorrectly. I think that I mean, take electricity for example. I heard someone say recently, like, well, AI is like electricity. It's here, and there's nothing we can do about it. And that's a wrong statement because I have electricity in my house, but you better believe every element of this house has been certified and there's codes for this and there's like been inspections. Like it's not something that they just installed in my house, like just, free balling kind of thing, And the thing is with AI right now is we're kind of, for lack of better terms, we're kind of free balling with this, we're just going at it. There's no guardrails, there's really no morality behind it. And so I think AI in general it's very dangerous because we're just not guarding ourselves in how we utilize it and why we utilize it. I think it's an incredible tool, obviously. I think anyone would be a fool not to see the potential, but I think we are also very foolish that we're not seeing all the potential damage and, in fact, the damage that is now happening that's been widely reported in recent months.
I yeah, I mean definitely. I mean we've actually been going through a drought period here in North Carolina in part because of data centers and AI and stuff. So definitely a very relevant topic.
Yeah.
So I like to ask personally, I always like to mention these interviews my favorite scene in the movie. So I think my favorite scene in the movie was the when she sees the guy like on the deck, on the balcony, whatever you want to call it, and it's kind of like a shady character. So how'd you go about filming that scene?
Yeah. So, well, we were actually in a big hurry. We were losing the light. It's definitely not underlit, but it's borderline underlit scene. And long story short, we actually did not have the actor who plays the dark figure with us that day, and we knew that this wasn't an accident. And so I just put my producer in the costume, which is just a black spandex costume basically, and he could barely hear us from down the hill. So I was constantly having to shout to him, "Okay, come up, stand up, be there, walk away." And so yeah, it's literally I think it's a three-shot scene, and we had to do it very quickly. And originally, actually, how it's cut together is exactly how I'd originally planned it. But we did try to do one like kind of like pan and tilt to kind of make it even more dynamic, and we just couldn't quite figure that out. It just didn't quite make sense in the moment. So yeah, it was very quick. It was minimal equipment. We literally had our camera and a bounce board and some negative fill, which is just a black piece of cloth, basically, to kind of create the contours on her face. And of course, the dark figure's so far away, he's just naturally lit up there on the back of the house. But we shot that probably, oh gosh, probably about 45 minutes before the sun completely set.
Gotcha.
And
Oh, you go ahead, Thomas.
yeah, and my next question to you is actually the very first question that came up to me when I was watching the movie with Jake, which is, and I want to guess before, but I mean where exactly was the remote house located? I'm gonna say Washington State just because it had like a lot of mountains and trees and stuff, but I don't know.
No, no, pretty far away from there. We're actually in LJ, Georgia, just
I
north
knew
of
it. I knew it. I
Atlanta.
knew it had to be in the South. I knew it. We were debating on where it was filmed, and because we watched it in the
Yeah.
public library, I was like, "That's the South."
That's pretty cool though that you thought it was like, another part of the country. That just to me that makes it more resonant maybe with people who don't live in the South, that they could think it's kind of anywhere mountain town USA or anywhere remote USA.
Yeah, no, it was. I thought it had beautiful scenery, and it really like said a lot about the story. Like, I really liked the scene where she was down at the creek and she was like drawing, by like kind of just relaxing. Where she ended up did seeing the figure on the way back. I thought that was a really
Right.
pretty scene. Really nice
Yeah.
cinematography.
Thank you. Yeah. That was a really good day down in there. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and speaking about, actors and stuff, was this a good film? Was it hard to cast for your crew for this act? Because, there's a lot going on. How you had to have a woman, had to end up playing an AI person, and just like a lot of things. I thought the acting was phenomenal in the short in
Thank
the
you.
film. So
Yeah.
any hang-ups with that?
No, thankfully not. No, actually, so I was, as I mentioned earlier, I not only direct and produce independent projects, but I also work in the studio system. So I actually worked on season 5 of Stranger Things as a consultant. And while I was there, I met Giuliani, who plays the lead, Gabriella, and she was an office PA, and eventually became the production secretary, for one of the production secretaries for Stranger Things. And so I had met her and just was already kind of enamored with her personality. And then I learned that she wanted to act, and I was like, let me give you an opportunity to act. I had a short film I did, first short film I'd done in a long time, about a year before we shot this, and she only had like a 2 or 3 line part in it. And she just killed it. She was amazing, and I was like, "Wow, I'd love to, like put her in a starring role." And that wasn't easy. Like I wrote the script with her in mind, which was really cool. And I haven't really had the chance to do that with my previous projects. And then actually just about everyone else in the film, except for Sharon, who plays Dr. Kate, I had worked with on that short film as well that I had cast Giuliani in, and I just really enjoyed working with all of them. They all did a great job in the short, and I was like, well, let's just give them a chance, everybody a chance to do something in a feature. So, and the guy who does the voice for AI Al, he and I go way back. We met in college. We were college roommates, and actually, he's been a collaborator on all 3 of my feature films. So it was fun to have him in there as the voice of Al.
Yeah, and speaking of AI Al, how was AI Al made? Like, what was the prop to make that? Because it looked real. It looked like something you might buy from a store or something like that. It looked like an Amazon Alexa. It was
Yeah,
crazy.
I was gonna say like almost like Alexa.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, I was definitely modeled in that concept for sure. And yeah, my production designer, Aaron Kelly, who I also went to college with, went to film school with, and he's done 2 of my 3 feature films, Remote being one of them. He designed it based on just kind of some ideas I had for it. And actually, my storyboard artist, Tiffany Cinco, she did the first rendering of it in a storyboard, and I really liked what she drew, and I was like, well, we'll just kind of base it off of that. And we had it 3D printed. It was a 3D printed model. So it was really cool. And we had 2 of them. We had the one that, well, I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it, but we had a stunt one basically, and that one was just a little bit smaller than the one we primarily utilized, and so we always had a backup in case something went wrong. But yeah, it was just a 3D printed piece that had a little LED light in it that we could control. And I don't know if you noticed in the sequence where they're dancing and stuff, like he's changing colors, like he's like a like a strobe light. So that was a fun little bit that we kind of improvised on the moment. But yeah,
Yeah, well,
Yeah, and
it looked great.
thank you.
speaking of the AI, I think my final question to you is going to be how are you able to get like that Chris audio from the therapist AI? Like once we found out that she was like AI like over the Zoom, like how'd you get that Chris Zoom interview perfectly on the movie?
Yeah, so we shot pretty much everything you see on a screen in the movie. We shot all of that stuff a month before principal photography. We did a second unit bit where I literally shot it with my I have just like a Fujifilm prosumer 4K camera. I think it's the XS10, I believe. And so we shot all that there. And I'm trying to remember. I think we just used. I think, if I'm not mistaken, because I didn't have a full team with me to do it, I just used a lapel. Yeah, in fact, I borrowed it from a friend of mine at my church. A lapel microphone that just synced with my iPhone, and that's how we got the audio. So it's actually very cheap, user-friendly audio. And we did do full-on playback on set with that audio, but we did end up in post-production going back and syncing the original audio clips with the footage. So yeah, so actually I'm glad you thought it sounded so crisp because it was pretty basic, like $20 mics kind of thing with an iPhone is how we recorded it.
And I always like to ask our filmmakers this: what was the hardest day on set? Was there one scene that in particular that we might not have known was super hard to film? A lot of takes, a lot of, morale might have been at a low point or anything like that.
Yeah, man, several actually. I'm trying. Let me dial it into one. Yeah, several. It was a tough shoot. We shot in 8 days, so it was a very short shoot schedule for a 85-page script. Um, I'll be honest with you. The when we were shooting the sequence that you referenced earlier, where she's walking up the hill and she sees the dark figure on the deck, that was pretty tense because we were running out of light. We were in almost the middle of the shooting schedule. We were exhausted. We'd already had a lot of problems, and and I just remember having to kind of get very terse with my DP. We just weren't in agreement at the time on some things, and that was tough because it's like we had to go back and like apologize about it, to each other. Me going first for sure. But that was pretty tense. That was a tense moment. And there's scenes that were supposed to be in the movie we just didn't even get to. There's things that there's one scene in particular I wish could have made it in, but we just didn't have time to shoot it. We had to restructure in the moment. But yeah, and then of course there at the end, which without spoiling it, when she confronts the dark figure for the last time, that was a very tense scene to do. We were supposed to shoot about 8 different shots, and we only ended up being able to shoot 4. So I had to kind of recalibrate that in my head, and it was genuinely nighttime. It was like we were shooting that like at 10 p.m. So we were tired, but yeah.
Well, I'm happy that that was one of the harder scenes because I did really like the scene. So I mean, y'all butted heads, but y'all made a good scene because I really thought it was beautifully shot well, and I thought it really developed well. So good job on that. I had no idea that would be one of the harder ones, but it paid off.
It just so happened, like I said, just the timing of it, where we were, because we were shooting 12-hour days and sometimes 12 and a half hour, and we were stopping for every 6 hours for meals and such. But I mean, it's hard because we only had about 6 people on the crew. So we needed about 2 more people and about 2 more days of shooting to really have made this a smoother endeavor. So.
So now that the film is done and ready and all edited, what's the future for remote film? Where can we expect to see it? How's
Yeah.
it going? What's the future for the film?
Yeah, it's on Amazon as we speak. So if you go and type in remote movie, it should pop up. There's a couple other movies out there named Remote, but this is the only one that's been released in 2026. But yeah, it's out there. Last I looked, it had like a 4.7 out of 5 on Amazon. I think it has a 7.7 on IMDb. So yeah, it's doing okay, and we're hopeful that people continue to watch it and rate and review it, and and give us their honest feedback.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely give it a shout out. We definitely enjoyed it, and it's like I said, to everyone watching at home, there's a lot of talk about AI. There's a lot of films being made about it, but this was one of the most interesting ones I've seen about it because it really takes you by surprise and it really makes you think. And at the end of the day, anytime I watch a movie that makes me think after, I consider that a really good movie. So this is definitely one to watch out for. And Ben, we have a lot of filmmakers that come on the show. We have a lot of actors that come on the show, producers, all sorts of people from all different walks of life. And you've had a lot of success in your career and you've been doing great things. So what are three biggest pieces of advice you would give to like an upcoming director trying to get into film?
Yeah, and it's a tough time to be getting into this for sure. I don't know. I don't know that I'd be brave enough if I was in my early 20s now to try this. But yeah, I can definitely give three pieces of advice. Number one, it's all about who you know. Your talent is unfortunately a side effect. It's not to say that you're not talented, but it doesn't come down to that. It comes down to who you're in with. Number two is money. Money runs the industry. It runs everything, including the projects I'm making. So, you need to have access to that, whether it's yours personally or the people you're involved with or a company. And once again, it's those two elements are what run the industry, who you know and money. Every single time. If you look up any of your favorite directors, I think if you really do a deep dive on them, you would come to find out that one or two of those rules I just said really affected their career, most likely. Not to say they're not talented, it's just that at the end of the day, it's these other elements that kind of move you forward. And I think number three, I think the advice I'd give now, as I'm kind of, I guess approaching what I would consider probably the middle of my career, is I think don't let this career rule your life. I think it's important to pursue other things besides just this. I've definitely been obsessed with it for a long time. I'm still obsessed with it, but I'm having to kind of dial myself back a little bit because it's the rewards for it are they're not always as clean cut as you imagine or want. And I think sometimes I've missed out on some elements in my life that I could have enjoyed more. And so I think it's just try to take a balanced approach when you come after this stuff because it is all or nothing. But I think try to make the all part of it some other things as well. Some of the things that you enjoy, some of the things you're interested in. Don't let this just be the one thing you do kind of thing. So that'd be my three pieces of advice.
Well, I appreciate that, Ben. I'm sure the filmmakers that watch our show will definitely appreciate that great advice. And I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today. And I hope you all enjoyed today's episode of Stay at Home Son podcast. Y'all be sure to check out the remote film on Amazon. We will and IMBD give it a good rating. We will put the links to that in the description below. And I hope you all enjoyed today's episode. And remember, stay at home.